Throughout the decades, Bowser has been a final boss in a multitude of scenarios. But how many times has Bowser failed, and how spectacularly? That's what we're figuring out today, by ranking every Bowser boss battle, including most of the spin-off games. So with that, let's get her ranked. 51. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. If you've played this before, Bowser is your ally for a large portion of the game, but at the very beginning, we technically fight him before that happens. And from this context, it's by far the easiest and lamest fight ever. All you do is punch the chain a few times and then he falls to his doom. There's not really any strategy, but that makes sense since this is the first boss fight of many. 50. Super Mario Run. Not only is this the most forgettable Mario of all time, it also has some of the worst bosses the series has seen. The majority of them require you to tap one button at the right time. And I'm not even exaggerating, that is the full extent of the strategy. Tap the screen slightly after your cutscene with Bowser, you'll go underneath his jump, and you win. This would have been the worst battle had it not been for the final fight against him, which is slightly more interesting. You chase him down an endless castle, and he'll chuck bombs at you that you have to throw back by bouncing off the bomb. This is somewhat fun, despite being a bit on the basic side. 49. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. I almost didn't count the Game Boy Color port, but I decided to since the screen crunch does impact the gameplay, and not really in a better way. It's a bit harder to see what's coming up, which kinda sucks. But even so, all you do is take him out with fireballs or jump over/under him. It's primitive, but it's also the very first Super Mario game, so it's not that surprising. There is some variation, like Bowser may throw hammers, or there's extra lava on the bridge. Toad also jumps for joy in the Deluxe version, and Peach pokes Mario in the most loving way possible, but for the most part, it's just the same fights repeated over and over again. 48. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. The first real sequel to Super Mario Bros., and they didn't even bother updating the boss fight. Again, this was the 80s, but there's not even an attempt being made here. The only plus here is that there's no screen crunch and it's easier to see what's going on. The Lost Levels also has a couple of fake Bowsers that are blue for some reason, so I guess that's moderately interesting. 47. Super Mario Bros. Bowser's first game. You jump over him, maybe under him, or if you're lucky, just fireball the guy to smithereens. The battles are the same across the board, outside of the differences I brought up earlier. 46. Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. Because why not also count this obnoxiously specific version? It's the same game, but with much better physics, so therefore it's more enjoyable. There's not much that hasn't already been said, besides that I really love all the different Toad animations at the end of each world. World 4 is a tower, and World 5 turns into a rolling ball just to show you a couple. Also, we've got this cute pixel art of Peach kissing Mario after beating 8-4 the first time, but then for World D4, his face is covered in kisses. And that's because you have to beat the game 8 times to access worlds 8 through D. That is what I call paying attention to detail. 45. Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Bros. I bet you never guessed that this is yet again the same kind of fights, but it looks and plays a lot gooder compared to the original, and with all the cool Toad stuff. 44. New Super Mario Bros. There's only a couple of instances that you'll fight Bowser, and since this game is celebrating the classic titles, it's virtually the same as the original. This includes a Dry Bowser variant, which essentially replicates the hammers from the original, although these are infinitely easier to dodge. The only major improvement is with the final boss, which is a little better considering you also take on Bowser Jr. at the same time. But even so, just throw Bowser Jr.'s shells back at him till he's gone, and run underneath Bowser at the right time. I'll give it some merit for having a higher challenge, but not much more than that. 43. Yoshi Topsy-Turvy. While you fight Bowser twice, the cardboard version isn't actually Bowser, or even a different form of him, so we're not gonna count it. The final boss is though, and it sure does exist. Bowser breathes fire and you have to jump over it and push bombs towards him by tilting your Game Boy Advance. The enjoyment factor really depends on how much you like tilt controls, and I personally don't really care much for them. By the end, you'll tilt cannonballs, and then he ends up on this peg above lava, so you'll shake your screen all around and knock him off. The only part of this fight I really care about is the ending, because this hilarious screen pops up that just says, "But Yoshi is not amused," and it just looks so funny. This is after he beats Bowser, by the way, which makes it even better since you'd think he'd be nothing but ecstatic for beating the villain, but you know what? Yoshi be Yoshi. 42. Yoshi's Safari, a game that's very difficult to play authentically nowadays. The final boss starts with Bowser covered in a bunch of armor and arm cannons, but after hundreds of shots, it gets torn apart, revealing the Koopa King in the flesh. Then you'll just tear apart Bowser's limbs, and I mean that quite literally. His arms will turn into bandages when you shoot them enough, and eventually he just gives up with a white flag in his grasp. The only real challenge here is just shooting down his own bullets and Koopa shells, otherwise it's pretty straightforward. 41. Hotel Mario. We're all aware of the super old cutscenes as they've been memed to death several years ago, but have you ever seen the final boss? Because yes, that's a real thing, and Bowser has the power to summon lightning from the sky. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie here and admit that that is pretty cool, even if Bowser's head is, way too big. The goal here is to just step on the top of his massive bonker, which requires you to time when you're on a higher floor than him. It's a fairly basic idea, but honestly, I can't get over Bowser's awkward sprites. What did they do to my boy? 40. Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. I'm really going down the rabbit hole by including a dance-off with Bowser. It is technically a battle, and I gotta include it so you can check out Bowser's sick-ass side flips. How a turtle of that caliber pulls that off so smoothly is beyond me, but that's besides the point. You're just playing DDR like normal, and sometimes you'll have to get rocket pieces on top of the arrows. Doing this helps you build a rocket, and once it's built, it's sent flying towards Bowser, stops in front of him, and a massive hammer comes out to whack him in the head. It's the goofiest thing I've ever seen, and I am totally here for it. I wouldn't call this much of an engaging fight gameplay-wise, but at least it's memorable. 39. Super Mario 64 DS. One of the most memorable boss fights of all time. Run behind Bowser, grab his little tail, and swing him around while somehow sitting in one spot towards a bomb. There's 3 different versions. The first one is pretty basic, the second starts with the floor dipping into some of the lava, and the third falls apart around you. I've always found it really easy to choke and mess up these Bowser throws, and that's especially true on the DS version. Maybe it's just me, but timing the throws feels really inaccurate. I'll push the button, and Bowser takes off when I don't expect it to. 38. Super Mario 64. This is the same as the DS version, but I find the timing to be a little more forgiving. It's also a lot easier to build up speed with your throw, and let's not forget the most important difference, Rainbow Bowser in the third fight, because who doesn't love that? He may look a lot dumber and less intimidating than the DS version, but I find it to be more enjoyable overall. 37. Super Smash Bros. Melee. This is another one I was debating on even counting, but there's 2 different fights with Bowser in the adventure mode that are consistent, so I figured I'd count this. It's Smash Bros. Rack up the damage and launch the guy off the stage. Bowser in particular is able to take a lot of extra damage. I guess he was tweaked to take more hits than usual to make him stand out more, but if you play on normal or harder and get through with 3 lives, you'll also fight Giga Bowser. This version of Bowser comes out of completely nowhere and is much stronger and larger in size. I just love that lunatic/psychopath look in his eye. I still find Giga Bowser to be creepy after all these years. 36. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. While Giga Bowser was a final smash in Brawl and 4, his boss status didn't return until Smash Bros. Ultimate. And he actually is a more proper boss too, with an actual life bar. I wouldn't call him that difficult per se, but neither was Melee's version. I just think he looks better in Ultimate, and his further prevalence on being a boss adds another layer of depth to his character. 35. Mario Pinball Land. I dislike pinball games with a passion, but I do have to give props for this game being a pretty decent boss fight. Bowser walks around, and you have to stun him by hitting the blue switch when the womps are in the air. After some hits, he'll fall on his back, and you can score actual points from this. Eventually, he'll curl up into a ball, and you'll whack Bowser himself into all the obstacles, then start breaking through walls of the castle, and finally smack him into Timbuktu. I really like the whole concept. I just wish I enjoyed pinball more, but it definitely deserves credit for being as creative as it is within this genre. 34. Super Paper Mario. By far the greatest story a Mario game has ever told. But the 2 Bowser fights are nothing spectacular, and are really there to just continue the story forward. You'll pull out Boomer and drop the pixels in front of Bowser so he can take the explosion. The same strategy is used in the underwear too, and that's about it. The other bosses in this game are definitely more spectacular. 33. Super Mario Advance 2 Super Mario World. Oh hey, it's the Super Mario World port that blows out the colors in order to combat the GBA's lack of a backlight. This is another iconic Bowser fight where you'll grab Bowser's Mecha Koopas and throw them into the air to sock him in the head. You'll also have to avoid falling flames, massive marbles, and his clown car pounding the ground. While it's an easy fight, there's a lot of fun in timing out the Mecha Koopa throws just right. It's just too bad that the colors are obnoxiously bright and there's a little bit of screen crunch. 32. Super Mario World. And just like that, problem solved. The colors are actually normal, and you can see a little bit more of the screen. Some may prefer how the GBA one controls, but I feel like they feel virtually identical. 31. New Super Mario Bros. U. Ah yes, the Mario era where Nintendo bosses had one gimmick: get large. New Super Mario Bros. U is not the first Mario game to do this, but it's by far one of the most uninspired attempts at it. You'll start by fighting him the old school way, and then he gets super big, and you'll knock Junior out of the clown car so you can drill into Bowser's head. It's fine and all, but nothing truly remarkable. 30. Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3. By far, one of my favorite classic bosses for simply using the environment around them as a gimmick. Bowser slowly ground pounding himself to his demise is a surprisingly fun gameplay loop. You have to be fast on your toes to make sure you don't get pounded while also avoiding his flames. My only issue with this version of this fight is Peach doesn't make that awful "I'm in another castle" JK joke. It's really strange that they replaced the text with something less interesting. I'm not sure why they did that. 29. Super Mario Bros. 3. It's the original version of this boss, but you can see a little more of the screen. And the super hilarious Peach joke is at the end too, so that obviously makes this version better. 28. Super Mario All-Stars Super Mario Bros. 3. For some reason, the layout of the blocks have been altered slightly. Bowser still has to hit the same spot 3 times to fall, but the general path is wider now. It doesn't really change the difficulty or anything, it's just an interesting observation I've made. 27. Super Princess Peach. Using the Vibe Scepter, you'll fight off Bowser to save Mario for a change. The first phase has Bowser ground pounding, throwing hammers, and attempting football tackles. After spamming the Joy Vibe, you'll be sent to the second phase. And get this, Bowser gets big. Again. This one is at least more creative than most big versions of Bowser. He'll breathe fire at you, as well as hurl bob-ombs, hammers, and spikes from the sky. The goal is to chuck bob-ombs in the air and have them blow up in his face. I can't be the only one that's reminded of Sonic 3's final boss, right? There's a lot more creative juices found in this fight than normal, and from a spin-off of all things. 26. Super Mario Maker for 3DS. Honestly, I'm not really sure how to categorize the Mario Maker games. You can make Bowser a boss fight, but how great it is really depends on how creative the level is. So I figured placing these somewhere in the middle made the most sense, especially since all 4 art styles offer slightly different types of fights. Mario Bros. 3 adds in the ground pound, Super Mario World spits fire into the air, and so on. You can also make Bowser bigger for extra hit points, and there's a few extra ways to alter his playstyle. 25. Super Mario Maker. It's a much nicer version of Mario Maker 1, although when it comes to making levels, it largely has the same tools for a Bowser fight. And why wouldn't you just play the Wii U version of Mario Maker 1? 24. Super Mario Maker 2. Again, the Bowser fights are pretty similar to the first game, but because of the new enemies, items, as well as Mario 3D World, there's way more options to mess around with. 23. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. Well, he's definitely not an important boss, but you'll take him on twice. The first time is in the Glitz Pit, and he's not very threatening. His second appearance is right before Shadow Queen Peach, and he brings Kammy Koopa. She'll make Bowser bigger and stronger at some point, but even still, you've been playing for so long that you'll have a pretty good strategy to take him out quickly. I kind of consider these the comic relief bosses. It's always fun to give Bowser a knuckle sandwich. 22. Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time. So this is where the RPG battles start to get a bit more interesting. Bowser teams up with Bowser Jr., which is only appropriate since the Mario Bros got their babies on their backs. You'll spam the Bros items as you normally would, Bowser breathes fire, and Jr. will smack his dad around with a hammer. When Bowser goes down, Jr. will still attack relentlessly, so it's a bit of a step up compared to the Thousand-Year Door. I found this fight to be more stimulating, but really, it only gets better from here. 21. Yoshi's New Island. Wow, what a surprise that Bowser is actually the final boss! Who could have seen that coming? Ho ho! Anyway, the boss fight is actually pretty decent. You'll start the first phase by throwing metal eggs, and after that, guess what happens? Kamek pulls out a hammer and... what's this? Bowser grows big? Holy sh**! I can't believe they actually tried that. Wow. Now, thankfully, it does pay homage to the classic final boss fight from Yoshi's Island, although you're fighting Bowser, and it's way easier to aim your egg shots. This fight is still fun and has some cool ideas, although it admittedly feels a tad anticlimactic. 20. New Super Mario Bros. 2. I'm kinda surprised that the most vanilla mainline Mario gets a spot this high up, but I gotta give props to this battle. Bowser grows big yet again, but this time it's a lot more intense. Platforms slowly fall from the ground while lava rises from below, and you must survive on these platforms while Bowser swipes them away. The dry Bowser version is a bit tougher, which is nice, but it's honestly a pretty creative and moving fight. You'll even have to avoid Bowser's fire at certain intervals, so it keeps you on your toes the whole time. 19. New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Say it with me, Bowser grows big. And this is by far my favorite version of him, because the casual battle turns into this massive chase sequence. Bowser is swiping away at the ground and breathing heaps of fire, and you have to get through the stage while he's right on your tail. It really starts to get invigorating by the end when Bowser changes planes and starts lunging at you instead. 2D mainline Mario bosses have yet to top this one. 18. Yoshi's Island DS. Getting to the end of Yoshi's Island DS is quite the task. You'll start the battle by throwing eggs at Bowser when he's doing an epic stretch. And yes, I know he's just preparing to breathe fire, but it looks like he's stretching, so just give me this, okay? So after ground pounding his belly a few times, Bowser grows big. But I actually really like how all the babies are involved for the grand finale. You'll simultaneously throw massive eggs at him at a distance while he spawns fire and meteors. The teamwork aspect adds a lot. It really feels like everyone is pitching in to help. My only gripe is that the final boss music is super calm and relaxing. It doesn't really fit at all. But I appreciate the game actually being pretty tricky and forcing me to put some effort in to win. 17. Mario and Luigi, Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions. Our first Bowser fight is just like the one in Super Mario RPG. He's used as bait for the tutorial. I almost debated on only including this fight, but I thought adding in Bowletta would be a fun choice, even if this is technically the spirit of Cackletta. But who cares what's right and wrong? This freaky clown version of Bowser is a charming villain that chucks flarets at us. Bowletta's breath is also much more intense, and funny enough, you technically can't win this battle. You have to lose so Bowletta can suck you up to fight the actual final boss. 16. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. These games could be interchanged. I just like the sprites more from a visual standpoint. Bowletta is very expressive in both games. I honestly don't know what it is about the classic sprite look that I desire so much.
Mario! How dare you disturb my family vacation?
15. Super Mario Sunshine. Despite this being Nintendo's funniest cutscene of all time, the final boss fight is really solid. Using the rocket nozzle, you launch yourself into the air, and at the peak of your jump, ground pound into the flame icons to destroy the bath, or so to speak. After 5 hits and carefully avoiding the bullet bills, the bath is destroyed and you save the princess. It's a very simple yet fun concept. I just wish the other 3 nozzles were used as well to some extent. But I can't complain that much. We were given these blurse cutscenes, so I'm satisfied. 14. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. The game that nobody believed was real until it existed. And it even comes with Mega Dragon Bowser, which again, Bowser is possessed by another force of nature, but he looks so freaking cool. He can fly around and his hair has this pixelated / fire hybrid look to it, and there's really no correct way to take out Mega Dragon Bowser. That's just the beauty of Kingdom Battle. You can come up with loads of different strategies that'll work. About halfway through though, a bunch of lava smashers and bucklers appear from the ground, adding to the pressure of taking out Bowser as soon as possible. There's so many of them by the end that it's really hard to focus on them without dying yourself. 13. Paper Mario Sticker Star. I know, I can't believe I'm putting this game so high on the list. This is one of the most frustrating parts if you don't know which stickers to use ahead of time. But man, it's honestly pretty exhilarating due to its sheer length and how many phases it goes through. You chase Bowser down a long narrow hallway for several turns. Then at the dead end, you knock Bowser into the lava and he grows much larger, big surprise, but also changes into a cardboard shape. You'll then attack his arms so they slowly fall apart, and eventually he can't hang on any longer. And then Kirsty sacrifices herself to give Mario extra power. And you know what? That's the best part, because Kirsty is annoying as shit and is doing something useful for once. And also, this is the only time Bowser has appeared intimidating in sticker form, so that's also somewhat of an accomplishment. 12. Mario & Luigi Dream Team. On top of another Mario & Luigi game, Dream Team has you fighting Bowser a few different ways. There's the normal fights where he'll breathe strands of fire and even teams up with Phantasma. Visually, the attacks are much more dynamic than they've ever been. Bowser's Shell Ball attack, as an example, puts you in a 3D perspective, and you must haul ass down this field while avoiding a bunch of flames. We've also got a giant battle with Bowser, and while it's visually enjoyable, it goes on for far longer than it needs to. And finally, Dreamy Bowser. Or in other words, Bowser with the RGB turned on. He can assemble entire armies at once, and also lots of ham, which, hey, they look pretty tasty, I'm not gonna lie. Fellas, we've officially reached the unironically epic status in terms of the vast styles of combat. Bowser chases us while spewing a fork of fire, he'll butt stomp massive sound waves, he is not playing around anymore. 11. Paper Mario Color Splash. This may look like one of the laziest ideas ever. It's just Bowser, but he's covered in black paint. But this paint has taken over Bowser's soul, and the battle begins by stomping off the paint. Bowser's head is eventually freed, and as he awakens in confusion, the paint clings back to his body without his control. So the only thing that'll work now is for Huey to sacrifice himself. Little by little, you'll beat the black paint off Bowser, and the paint attacks are blocked and forced into Huey's bucket. You'll eventually get rid of all the paint and free Bowser from his suffering. It all seems good in the world until Huey has to leave. You would never guess going into a game that you would get attached to an actual paint bucket, but his departure is genuinely heartbreaking, and it makes the battle all the more powerful and meaningful. 10. Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Two different Bowsers is a riveting idea. It's too bad they didn't go the extra mile with including more Paper Mario / Mario & Luigi characters. But even so, the papercraft fight against the Bowser duo is really cool. You'll chuck fireballs at the fancily folded paper until it collapses and deal damage by performing a sick-ass flip stomp. There's a few different papercraft battles in Paper Jam, and I'm glad we got one with the Bowsers. The final boss, on the other hand, does something really interesting, and that's literally combining both Bowsers into one entity. Bowser wearing a terrifying Bowser suit is unironically clever for a game that plays it so safe. He's also able to absorb his allies' souls and get back health. Like, for real, do not with two Bowsers. There's also a dry Bowser fight, but there's not much to mention about that one. 9. Super Mario Galaxy 2. Nintendo was gonna have a tough time topping the first game's boss battles, and they definitely gave it a valiant attempt here. The main gimmick with this fight is Bowser spawning little boulder planets, and then you have to ground pound the right spot to hit them. It's a cool idea, although adding a big circle-shaped target showing you where to ground pound does take away any sense of challenge. What really makes these fights so special, however, is the orchestrated music. It's nearly impossible to argue that this and Galaxy 1 aren't the greatest Mario OSTs. The battles get a little tougher with purple waves protruding from the boulders and Bowser's fist. They'll give you a nice little shock if touched, so you do need to be rather careful. The main reason this isn't higher on the list is the final phase in the final battle. The climax is built up and up and up, only to end extremely easy. The boulder planet things pop up, and you'll just hit Bowser a few times with little to no issue. It still thematically looks impressive, but the drop in difficulty creates an anticlimactic-ism. That's a real word, I made it up. 8. Super Mario Odyssey. One of the biggest twist endings in Nintendo's history. Bowser gains the power to attack with his fancy white top hat, and for the first couple battles, you'll have to get a hold of his own hat and punch him silly. When you really think about it, it's really goofy how Mario wears a huge hat on top of his own hat. The punching feels really satisfying, and later on, you'll also have to dodge some of Bowser's tail swipes. The truly good part comes in during the wedding. In order to escape, Mario captures Bowser himself, and you'll run through a level, clawing through rocks and smashing your way through walls. There's always been a fascination to play as Bowser in a mainline Mario game, and for a brief moment, we get to actually experience it. This alone makes it one of the best boss battles, since you use the villain for a good purpose. 7. Bowser's Fury. Man, I can't wait for Nintendo to make a full-fledged Mario game in this style. These battles can only be described as intense. Mario takes the black goop from Paper Mario Color Splash and goes absolutely nuts with it. Mario also grows into a giant Super Saiyan god, and you'll fight him using the same attacks from when you're normal sized. Fury Bowser can soar through the air, breathe massive waves of flames, and spawn disaster strikes. Each phase has different attack patterns, so it's always different each time you fight him. When you get down to the last few shines, he's always on the battlefield until you hit 50 cat shines. Then the fight switches to riding Plessy through the pouring rain to smash the cat bell ball into Bowser's body. If this fight wasn't repeated so many times, it'd be one of the best the entire series has to offer. 6. Super Mario 3D Land. For a 3DS game, this battle is surprisingly dynamic. It takes the same idea as the classic games, but adds more of a dimension to it with many more twists and turns, as well as additional obstacles to avoid. Bowser himself takes up the entire bridge, so you have to be wary to run underneath him when he jumps or jump around him. One of the versions has Bowser using the Tanuki tail, which is really cool to see and a point most people don't bring up. The final boss is where things get awesome though. Mario has to traverse several buildings with narrow pathways while being chased down by Bowser. It's surprisingly exhilarating. It requires you to be quick on your feet. And you gotta love the nod to the original Donkey Kong when Bowser starts throwing barrels. It's just super charming. I really appreciate just how over the top this whole segment gets. It goes on for a pretty good length, and slowly ramps up in difficulty the entire time. You'll also fight Dry Bowser a couple times, which is a little more difficult. And he also has blue flames, which is naturally just better. 5. Super Mario 3D World. If you were craving creative boss fights after Nintendo's lack of originality in their Mario games, they sure delivered that with Mario 3D World. The first two pit Bowser in a pimp car. Bowser hurls fire and soccer balls at you, and you must swipe the balls back at him to attack. It's super goofy and doesn't really make sense, but you gotta love its absurdity. And then things get even better with the final boss. Bowser takes the power-ups and uses them to his own advantage, which gives us Meowser. Meowser isn't much of a threat, but the way the fight is set up is really satisfying since you'll have to slowly climb up a tall tower. And you can't hurt him at all, so he's basically invincible until the very end. And halfway through, Meowser uses the double cherry and creates multiple clones of himself. If it wasn't for this conveniently placed POW block, Bowser for sure would have gotten Mario that time. 4. Paper Mario. In a strange turn of events, Bowser comes the closest to victory in the original Paper Mario. He gains access to the Star Rod, which makes him completely invincible. In the first fight against him, you cannot win, no matter how hard you try. It's not until the end of the game and you've collected all the Star Spirits that you think you have a chance, but even then, they aren't strong enough to take him on. This is it. Bowser has finally done it. He's actually found a way to defeat Mario, and it doesn't help that Kammy Koopa made him even more powerful. That is, until Peach uses the essence of prayers to make the Star Spirits stronger than Bowser. That's literally what happens. If it wasn't for her, there's no way Mario could have won the battle on his own. You get this feeling of despair. You've spent all this time training and you still weren't good enough. But with a bit of teamwork, you're able to conquer and survive Bowser's wrath. 3. Mario & Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey. Like the other Mario & Luigi games, there's a couple times where you'll fight Bowser normally without much trouble. I was really debating on counting Dark Bowser at all, because you fight him with the actual Bowser, and this version is simply a form that Darkstar created with Bowser's DNA, but it is his DNA, so close enough for me, and he looks frickin' sick. That dark blue color with the piercing red eyes gives me those Shadow the Hedgehog edgy vibes. There's a couple things in particular that makes this battle so spectacular. The first is the music, which is just incredible and addicting. It goes for a I'm stuck in a thunderstorm feel, while also emancipating urgency and pressure to do well. The second thing is just how many things are going on in this fight. You go back and forth between fighting Dark Bowser and the Dark Star Core, which that alone is an amazing gimmick that's utilized throughout a lot of the game. When fighting Dark Bowser, he uses a lot of the same attacks as you, but also traps you in this ectoplasm cage, and he'll throw a massive pile of enemies at you, forcing you to run your way back through the storm while avoiding even more enemies. And this is just one half of the fight. Inside Dark Bowser, you have to take on Dark Star Core, which fires a number of different lasers at you and grabs the brothers with his creepy twisty hands. Ugh. So much effort went into this final boss. There's a reason this is claimed to be the best Mario & Luigi game. 2. Mario & Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. And this is essentially the exact same fights. The only difference is, like with Superstar Saga, I prefer the sprites more in the older games. Both of them play about the same, so that leaves us with one game. 1. Super Mario Galaxy. What else could it possibly be? Super Mario Galaxy did exactly what all the other games were doing at the time. As an example, God of War was pretty popular in the mid-2000s and used a lot of epic orchestrated music. That same kind of music was applied to all the Bowser fights, and good God, it makes a striking difference. I really love how you also fight Bowser before fighting Bowser. He destroys the very platforms you're standing on while running up to him, making sure you feel as unwelcome as possible. The main gimmick is you want to lure Bowser to these blue orby bits. If he's charging down fast enough, his tail will catch on fire, giving you a chance to attack. This causes him to spin around on his shell, making him even weaker to your punches. When you get down to the final bout, you'll have to do this and also smack him with these green orby plant thingies. The music is what really makes this boss work so well. It sets the tone perfectly and really drives home the battle. And then at the end, Mario smacks Bowser into the vastness of space, which straight up kills him. You watch Bowser get sucked into a massive pile of lava with no way of escaping. Now look, I've talked about this battle so many times, and even now, I still can't get over how well done it is. Who would have guessed that Bowser's track record is a whopping 0-51? That's pretty bad if you ask me. But I hope you found this video pretty good. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all later.